30 seconds.
Recording in progress.
Good evening. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Conejo Open Space Conservation Agency to order. And if you would please rise and we will salute the flag. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Could we have the roll call, please?
Director Engler?
Here.
Director Nichols?
Yes.
Director Sullivan?
Present.
Vice Chair Newman?
Here.
Chair Huffer?
Yes. Thank you very much. Item 3, we have no presentations and announcements. Because this is a special meeting, public comments are limited to the item on the agenda. When we get to that, we do have 2 speaker cards. Item 5, there is no consent calendar because this is a special meeting. Action items number 6, nothing, and we'll move on to agenda item number 7. Information items. A, fuels management presentation. I will start with Mr. Stark.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. This is an informational item to bring the COSCA board and community members up to date on COSCA's wildfire safety programs and associated land management decisions. Tonight I'll touch on fire behaviors within the vegetation communities common in the Conejo Valley, how they differ from management practices in other parts of the state, and I'll summarize the scientific underpinnings of COSCA's land management program and COSCA's activities related to wildfire safety in general. And I'll also tie this in with our management goals with the city's general plan, COSCA's strategic plan, and COSCA's management principles and guidelines and other regional plans. I do have a PowerPoint that I will go to now. So fire is a natural feature of the landscapes found here in the Conejo Valley. Since 1939, the state has mapped 79 fires that have impacted portions of the Conejo Valley. And my data layer is a little bit older. There's been, I think, 4 more fires since then. So we're up over 80 fires in that time period. Most fires here occur under normal weather conditions, and half are held under 60 acres, thanks to a well-organized and resourced fire department. Even the region's largest fires have only touched edges of our urban interface. Now, most home losses in this area have occurred only from one fire, and that's primarily the Woolsey fire in 2018. The fires that do cause home losses generally correspond here with heavy Santa Ana wind conditions. Almost all fires in this area are caused by people, since we don't have a whole lot of lightning here. And the severe fires happen when ignition happens during dry and windy conditions. It is anticipated that weather conditions associated with severe fires will increase over time with a changing climate. It's important to know that fire behaviors and the associated management considerations do vary by dominant vegetation type and the weather conditions driving fire severity. The dominant vegetation types on COSCA open space are chaparral and coastal sage scrub. Tonight I'll mention chaparral a lot, but I also mean the soft chaparral, which is the coastal sage scrub, so we'll use that term interchangeably. These are shrub-dominated landscapes, so fires generally burn closer to the ground than a forest. These communities are adapted to fire return intervals of 30 to 150 years and have adapted to recover well following disturbance. Today, these vegetation communities are burning more frequently, so they suffer from too much fire rather than a shortage of it. This risks habitat loss and conversion of our vegetation communities from shrubs and native chaparral to more flammable vegetation types. In our area, fire intensity is generally dictated by wind more than fuels. In contrast, forested areas are adapted for more frequent lightning fires and have more variable fire intensities that are driven by vertical fuel structure as well as wind. Historic fire suppression efforts in forests have contributed to excess fuel buildup that do contribute to higher severity but this is not the case in chaparral habitats. Having characterized the fires common to the Conejo Valley, we'll look at how COSCA's management decisions are informed by these fire types and COSCA's foundational plans and management principles. COSCA plays a central role in implementing the City of Thousand Oaks' general plan by protecting vital open space and ensuring public safety. The general plan sections speaking to wildfire safety are found in the safety element, and COSCA's conservation mandates are described in the parks and open space and conservation elements. Each of these elements is internally consistent with the other. COSCA is also guided by COSCA's strategic plan and the board-adopted management policies and guidelines. Beyond our foundational documents, COSCA aims for consistency with a number of other regional and statewide plans. Some of those I have listed up on the slide. COSCA's primary goal with wildfires does align well with that of the Ventura County Fire Department, being a common goal of protecting lives and property. The policies in the safety element concern for wildfire safety are addressed through COSCA's wildfire safety programs. Central to these policies is that COSCA's fuel management programs are intended to be informed by science and through partnerships with other agencies. Beyond supporting COSCA's Defensible Space program, the general plan supports community education to ensure that COSCA's neighbors know their role in community fire safety. The parks and open space and the conservation elements further define COSCA's goals, particularly in regard to the protection of natural resources. First and foremost, we are a conservation agency, and we were established to protect these areas. In 2009, the COSCA board approved a set of management policies and guidelines to assist COSCA staff in implementing the agency's mission. Among these guidelines is allowing fire to play its natural ecological role while accommodating emergency facilities on a conditional basis. COSCA currently maintains emergency access roads, fuel modification zones, and helipads, as well as some isolated fuel breaks. COSCA has determined that fire breaks beyond fuel modification zones can be conditionally approved following thorough research. One fuel project that's close to completion is in Arroyo Conejo, and I'll show a map of that later. And more efforts are planned for the future. As with the general plan, the COSCA strategic plan leans heavily on the use of scientific principles to determine land management protocols while recognizing COSCA's responsibilities regarding public safety. As previously mentioned, land management methods for fire safety differ in chaparral-dominated vegetation, communities, and forests. COSCA has reviewed a broad selection of scientific research to determine the land management methods that offer the greatest degree of public safety while protecting vital natural resources. Recent studies completed even since the Woolsey fire in 2018 confirm findings from older studies. The top recommendations from wildfire experts include ensuring that each home has 100 feet of defensible space, which protects homes from heat and flames while providing safety to firefighters. 100 feet is sufficient to prevent heat and flame ignitions, but is ineffective against ember ignitions. Home hardening, of course, preventing ember ignitions offers the most enhanced safety beyond the defensible space zone, and only homeowners can do that. Working at the neighborhood level also increases the proportion of fire-hardened homes and can contribute to community protection. Because a lot of, when we see some of the big fires in Southern California, they're going house to house once a house gets started. So, but when a community gets together and they harden homes together, it stands a much better chance of keeping that fire out of the urban area. Some strategically placed fuel breaks near homes may also be helpful in specific locations, but fuel breaks in remote areas have not proven effective as it relates to home protection. Because forest fires are fundamentally different from chaparral fires, the management recommendations will be different. These are, we hear regularly in the news reports and in the papers about how a history of fire suppression has allowed excess fuels build up in forest floors. And in that case, in forested areas, these are fuel-dominated fires, and so working on the forest floor and maintaining and doing things like, prescribed fire and things like that do have benefits in forested habitats, but they generally are not effective in chaparral habitat. COSCA has established a set of fire safety programs that address the project types that are most likely to improve safety in chaparral-based ecosystems. These include our Defensible Space Program, an Enhanced Fuels Management Program, and Community Education and Services. I'll go over each of these briefly. COSCA works closely with the Ventura County Fire Department's Fire Hazard Removal Program to ensure year-round compliance with the fire code, which is the 100 feet of defensible space. And the map here shows how that is distributed throughout the city and COSCA's interest area. All this work is done in partnership with the City of Thousand Oaks and the Conejo Recreation and Park District. We work together in a common contract to make sure all this work gets done, and we communicate regularly during the season to get it all done on time, and then do it again when the stuff grows back. So COSCA receives weed abatement notices just like private landowners. We just get a box full of them. So here are some of the scientific findings related to defensible space. The 100 feet of the defensible space is strongly supported by scientific findings. And it's important to know what defensible space does and what it does not. Defensible space is, as I mentioned before, is useful in preventing radiant heat and direct flame contact from igniting structures. But during a wind-driven fire, when our communities are most at risk, it's really embers that are igniting homes, and the embers readily fly over the defensible space zones regardless of their width. Some of the research specifically says that the most valuable area to clear is up to 60 feet. I think 100 feet makes good sense here because it's not just about protecting homes from fire, but it's also providing safe places for our firefighters to work. So COSCA does have an enhanced fuels management program where we are doing some fuels management outside of the 100-foot defensible space zone. On the map here, this is a project we've been working on for 4 years now, removing Arundo Donax from Arroyo Conejo in an area that splits between two heavily populated areas. Arundo is like that bamboo cane that you'll see growing in the creeks. It creates dense thatch, so a pretty thick fuel bed. It also contains volatile oils, so even the live plants are quite flammable. Normally a creek can act as a brake to slow down fires, but when there's Arundo in the creek, it blows right through it. It also completely cooks the riparian corridor if it does ignite. Without Arundo, they're much more resilient. The green dots on that map are Mexican fan palms, so we're also working there. The Arundo out there is now under control, and we're just doing mop-up on it. The small palms have been removed, and COSCA is currently seeking funds for the removal of the mature trees. Here's kind of a close-up of what Arundo looks like, and that's what it looked like before the project and after the project. And even all the thatch you see laying on the ground has all been raked and removed. The small palm trees are easy to cut off. They don't grow back when you cut them down. The taller ones are just more expensive, so we're seeking some larger funds to get after those. But you can see why we want to go after palms. The Mexican fan palm has a lot of fine fibers up in the head of the tree and along all the fronds and dead fronds that stay attached, and they easily catch embers and can ignite the trees. And when these things get going, they're dropping a big ember cast with large sized embers, and even entire fronds can detach during wind and fly onto local rooftops and up against homes. So we do think that a system-wide removal of these is important. This is also a costly project, and we're out seeking funds to do it. We have a plan for prioritizing which areas get treated first, though, and so we can prioritize those nearby neighborhoods where we think that their removal would do the best for community fire safety. Our long-term goal is to get rid of all of them. So we're also out mapping Russian thistle, as we all know as tumbleweeds. Russian thistles, also known as tumbleweeds, form large spherical plants that detach from their root and travel in the wind to disperse seeds. These can then accumulate against fences and structures, forming a ready fuel source for wildfire. And burning tumbleweeds are easily carried by wind and transmit fire through a landscape. This species is rather ubiquitous through open space, so it's not likely that we'll be able to eradicate this species completely, but we've already begun work in areas upwind of communities and in areas where there's been a history of tumbleweed accumulation. We've been doing a lot of work. We've been working in the Labisco Hill area for a couple years now, but we've mapped most of it. There's still some out there, you can't map them all, right? But we do have some priorities set to try and do this. And these will be included in a invasive species management plan that COSCA will be bringing to the board for approval in February. But beyond just talking about fuels, COSCA's fire safety program also includes public education on ways that homeowners can protect their home as well. Because community safety is ultimately a partnership that includes COSCA as the wildland property owners, our Ventura County Fire Department, which educates the community and are the first responders and put the fires out. But homeowners play a critical role here too. The Community Education Services Program was initiated to disseminate information mostly about home hardening, collective neighborhood defense, and to assist those facing challenges in preparing for wildfire. COSCA has partnered with the Ventura Regional Fire Safety Council since 2021 to assist homeowners in preparing for wildfire. Some of these we started with direct mailers, so some of these went out about home hardening. We sent the 17,000 mailers throughout Thousand Oaks. We've also funded free home inspections through the Fire Safe Council. And through this program, people could call in, and then a trained inspector would go to people's homes and identify the areas that they could improve to prevent ember penetration into the structure or ignition of anything near the structure itself. And this is all with the goal of preventing ember ignitions. We also hosted a series of curbside chipper days. So for residents that were working on home hardening around their homes and removing some vegetation, sometimes they don't have an easy way of getting rid of all that stuff. So they could sign up, and the first ones were curbside events where people had to bring their stuff to a centralized area. The Fire Safe Council learned later that it's easier for them just to drive the chipper around rather than having people carry all their vegetation around. So that's kind of the way it's going now. They're still doing some of this work in our community, although COSCA is not currently contracting for it, but there are numerous other, but the Fire Safe Council and the RCDs are doing these, so it's still happening. We also sponsored a series of educational seminars and webinars during the COVID period. ultimately, this was to communicate to people that homeowners have the ultimate responsibility for protecting their homes, in wind-driven fires from ember ignitions, and to try and just instill in the community how necessary this was. They had great attendance, and since then there's been regular community meetings, and the fire departments have been out promoting the same messages as well. So I think it is penetrating in the community, and we're getting good support for that. As sort of a proof of concept pilot project, we funded home hardening implementation on 10 homes for at-risk seniors. Most folks in Thousand Oaks, can probably do their own home hardening or hire a contractor to do it, but we have some in our community that have, financial barriers to doing that. So we were just trying to show here that if grant money was to come from the state to do this type of project, that there was a model set up. So the fire safe councils documented how all that went. One of the interesting parts about this project was trying to find contractors who could do home hardening, and that's when we realized there was a workforce deficiency. We just didn't have people out that were ready to do this work. Our current contract with the Fire Safe Council is funding their work on contacting contractors, providing training on how to do the implementation of home hardening, and preparing a vetted list of licensed contractors to make it easier for people to do this work on their homes. Our current grant with the Fire Safe Council is also promoting the FireWise USA program. This is a certification from the National Fire Protection Association, and this is to encourage neighborhoods to work together. Like I mentioned earlier, if we can get groups of homes together where everyone's doing home hardening, that we can make a stronger community-based defense. When we started working on this program, there was one FireWise community in Thousand Oaks. Last I heard, there were 14. There may be more now because there were, 5 or 6 more in the process. So this is catching on in Thousand Oaks, and I think it could be a great benefit going into the future. Lastly, COSCA also works with other agencies in keeping emergency access roads accessible. In some open space areas, such as Lang Ranch, the Ventura County Fire Department assists with road maintenance. We also have roads in other open space areas that are maintained by Southern California Edison. They're a little less prompt in their management of their lands than the fire department's more regular. But we did get a grant from the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy on this project where we had gullying formation. This is on the Autumn Ridge road/trail, and every couple of years it'd become problematic, so we decided just to fix it. Now we pipe the water down the hill. And I put this information out if anybody did have any additional questions about COSCA's programming and the rationale behind it. I'm also do have a lot of scientific reference materials. If people were interested, they can email me, and I will be happy to share the scientific studies that we base our management on. So that's how COSCA is planning for our fire safety programs. I will be available for questions, but first I'd like to introduce our friends from the Ventura County Fire Department for their presentation, and then we can handle questions afterwards. And our Wildland Battalion Chief, Joe Williams, will introduce his team.
More comfortable standing up. There you go.
Hello everyone, my name is Joe Williams. I'm our Wildland Battalion Chief for the
Do you want to see if he's got the microphone?
My team behind me, we have a big team today. Captain Ryan Matherson.
Excuse me, Chair. You need to hit the microphone button for the speaker. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. One of our vegetation management captains in our Wildland Division, Brian Keith, other VMP captain in our Wildland Division.
Ford is an assistant fire marshal for our prevention bureau. So first I'm gonna invite up Mike. Mike's gonna talk a little bit about our FHRP program. That is, as Brian was talking about, the land between the house and 100 feet out. And then I'll invite up Brian and Ryan to talk about our VMP program. That is from 100 feet out beyond. So I'll invite up Mike first and we'll have a discussion. Thank you.
Do we need to tell?
Good evening. My name's Mike Warford. Yes, I'm an assistant fire marshal out of the Fire Prevention Bureau. So just a brief, so there's two different things that happen here. I handle everything within 100 feet of the homes, and then our vegetation management division runs all the vegetation management projects beyond that. So real briefly, so out of the Fire Prevention Bureau, there's 5 assistant fire marshals. They all oversee a specific function within the Fire Prevention Bureau and enforce different sections of the fire code. In the section I oversee, the Community Wildfire Preparedness Division, we do everything relating to defensible space. So in Ventura County, that encompasses about 19,093 parcels. It's commonly known as the FHRP program. Like Brian mentioned, it stands for Fire Hazard Reduction Program. This program's been in place for 30 plus years. It kicks off in early April. We send out our initial notices to everybody within our program, and it's just advising them that, hey, it's that time of year when it's time to clear our brush and weeds within the homes and make that defensible space area, and the deadline is June 1st. That's when our inspection campaign begins, and we're out and we set foot on every parcel. But really nowadays, the program is a year-round program, and it needs to be maintained year-round. So we do get complaints and things that we follow up on also, and throughout the year, and we will follow up on those accordingly. I will mention that we have a really good working relationship with the city of Thousand Oaks, like most our cities. There's probably several hundred parcels within our FHRP program spread out between COSCA, the city of Thousand Oaks, Conejo Rex and Park District. And they're really good about getting started early in the season and trying to make that June 1st deadline. As we go out and do our inspections, if we have any problems, I have a point of contact at each of the different entities within the city, and I'll either pick up the phone, call them, or send them an email with a satellite aerial image of the area in question where we might be short, some additional work's done, or maybe they haven't got to that particular parcel yet, and I get an immediate response back with an update and a timeline, and so we work through that process year after year, and it's a really good working relationship. So as we progress through the season, we have a 99% compliance rate. Parcels that don't do the work, we can't get them to clear for whatever reason, and we go out of our way to contact them and find a point of contact so we can educate them on why we need this and what's needed. We'll go out and meet with them. There's always a handful. It's usually a 99% compliance rate, and then if we can't get a parcel cleared for whatever reason, we have a contractor through the county. We'll bring the county contractor in, we'll clear that parcel, and the cost of that property plus an administrative fee gets placed on the property tax bill for that particular parcel. So year to date, we're probably at about 10 parcels that we've cleared, using that method. Other than that, besides our FHRP program, I oversee landscape plan reviews. So the current state law is 100-foot defensible space is the minimum requirement. It's directly out of the Public Resource Code for all properties that are located in the state responsibility area. And then the government code for all local response areas. And it defines what's needed, what defensible space it means in those areas. And those are the codes that we use to enforce that. Beyond that, as Brian's alluded to in his presentation, with all the fires that have gone on over the last 20 years, the fire codes have, continually evolved regarding that. So construction requirements have become more robust for homes being built in high or very high fire zones. And then with that, there's not much more tweaking we can do to the building code. So now they're looking at laws that pertain to landscape within new construction homes that are being built within those areas. So Locally, we adopted a more stringent ordinance, our local Ventura County Ordinance 32. That's been in effect for approximately the last 5 years. So any new homes that are being constructed within those zones, we require a landscape plan review, and landscape architect or owner will submit those plans to us. We review them for different requirements. It's the 100-foot zone's broken up into 3 zones now: Zone 0, Zone 1, and Zone 2. So we approve those, go out and inspect them, and then those properties are signed off and people, gain occupancy. The other things we look at: vegetation complaints. Those come in, year round. We'll send a fire inspector out from the Fire Prevention Bureau to go investigate those. If they're legit, we will contact the property owners and go through the proper methods of trying to get that parcel cleared again. We also deal with AB 38 real estate transactions. AB 38 is a law that was passed 4 years ago and requires anyone selling a home within a high or very high fire hazard designated area to get a wildfire disclosure report from the fire department. Those come into the Fire Prevention Bureau, and an inspector out of my unit goes out and conducts that inspection. And as Brian also mentioned, we're pretty involved with fire safe councils. Locally, we have 5 fire safe councils, the main one being Ventura Regional. And there's a lot of educational programs going on right now. A big push for communities to become part of the FireWise program, which has some insurance reduction mechanisms as part of a community deciding to go and try and reduce some of their fuel loads within their communities. And as you alluded to, it's gotten much higher than that, Brian. We're at 41 communities currently right now. And so the main point of contact is Ventura Regional. They take everyone that's interested in that program, they start them down that road, and then at some point we come out from the Fire Prevention Bureau, help them with their assessment, and then get that paperwork together and submit it to CAL FIRE, and then ultimately to NFPA for approval. And then beyond that, we get a lot of requests. People get insurance requests from their insurance company, or they want tips on home hardening, and we'll come out and we'll do an inspection of their property and give them those recommendations accordingly. So with that, I'll bring up my colleagues from the Wildland Division. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ryan Matheson, the VMP captain, and Brian Heath working together here. So, Brian, we can start the first slide. And I hope I don't kill you by PowerPoint, but I'll explain to you when we get to the end here.
I think, does Richard have it?
This is just a message to TOTV. TOTV folks, if you could.
There we go.
Thank you. Excellent.
All right. You're live there, Ryan.
Okay. All right. So we have a lot of projects across the county that we're working on. So at the end, I'll get to it. We focused on 3 of them, on East and West County, and how we got there. But all the below methods play a role in reducing fuel loads while maintaining defensible space and safe, accessible corridors. Each method offers unique advantages depending on terrain, vegetation type, environmental sensitivity, and project goals. Together, these strategies form an integrated approach to long-term wildfire prevention and landscape resilience. And these are some of the methods, but 5 of the methods we use is mowing, masticating, cut, stack, and pile burning, cut and chip, prescribed fire, and prescribed grazing. And we go to the next slide and we'll break those down. These are a couple of the masticators, mowers that we use. The one on the left is a remote control mower for more sensitive areas, and then we have a masticator excavator with a masticating head, and that assists with bigger projects on roadsides. We go to the next slide. What's that? Okay. The masticator is useful on fire roads and strategic fuel breaks. Mowing helps maintain fire roads where mastication is not needed, creates defensible space by lowering fuel loads, helps maintain long-term effectiveness of fuel breaks, and mower keeps road shoulders and access routes open.
Yeah, my turn.
All right. Get in there.
Teamwork here. So we're talking about cut, stack, and pile burning. So in essence, we have crews that go out there with some chainsaws, cut down the brush, stack it into a pile, and then end up burning it once the pile has cured to dry enough. Next slide. So we use this opportunity on larger fuel breaks where vehicles are inaccessible. So in essence, we can't just drag a chipper up the side of the mountain to chip it. So we have to cut, stack, and pile these piles. It's the best practice for shaded fuel breaks and mosaics. And when we talk about mosaics, it's not clear cutting, it's leaving a lot of the plants in place. And basically just having what looks like a lollipop of a piece of a brush. We use this also in biological and culturally sensitive areas. So it's a lighter hand on the land, if you will. We use pile burning, and it safely disposes of excess woody material under controlled conditions and creates more effective fuel breaks. And while also, again, minimizing the ground disturbance, and also provides for nutrient-rich soil after we burn the piles. So in essence, it's fertilizing the landscape again. All right, next slide.
Cut and chip. Again, for those sensitive areas where we don't want heavy machinery, we send our hand crews in. We'll thin out roadsides, or if we're in the middle of a property owner where it's not a roadside, but we're maintaining a fire road and we're taking mitigation measures. Again, we'll send in the crews and take the proper precautions, and we use the chipper for that. So we can go to the next slide. Reduces roadside fuel continuity and fire spread potential, enhances safety for vehicle movement and emergency response. Can be broadcast evenly for erosion control, helping maintain roadways while reducing overall fuel load and ignition potential along roadways. And it's also used for roadside maintenance with hand crews. You can go to the next slide. You want to talk about goats?
Yeah, I'll
Talk about goats.
I know a little bit about some animals here.
He's doing the project now.
So prescribed grazing, and so this is where we bring in a contractor that brings in goats and sheep, and we put them on the landscape, and they start munching away. And that's what they love to do, and it's very easy turnkey operation of reducing fuels and fuel loads. So what they like to eat is star thistle, some invasive species, the mustard invasive species, and a lot of the grasses. And you know, as soon as the goat eats stuff, some stuff has to come out, so it essentially fertilizes that land for the next rainy season to come in also. It's also a light footprint on the landscape and environmentally friendly, sustainable management practice for fuel modification and or fuel breaks. And let me tell you what, great public relations, seeing animals up on the hillside and chewing away and seeing them create some fuel breaks just by themselves. And we'll talk about a project that's going on right now, but it's very well received. Okay, next slide.
We'll get it. One of the success stories with the grazing, we do have 4 projects throughout the county. It's every spring we do it. But the Easy Fire in 2019 for the Reagan Library, that fire scar went around Reagan Library, and it was minimal defensible space needed, or structure protection needed for Reagan Library due to the goats. So prescribed fire, it's another one of our methods. We can go to the next slide. It's intentionally applied under controlled conditions to reduce vegetation and fuel buildup. Promotes healthier ecosystems by recycling nutrients and stimulating native plant growth. It reduces ladder fuel that allows fires to climb into tree canopies. So any kind of ground fire can easily get up there, and we start getting crown fires, and that's not our friend. That's where you get the ember cast going. Removes accumulated leaf litter, deadwood, and dense brush, and increased and diversified habitat for wildlife. I'll talk about it on the next slide, but it creates different age class and fuels, slowing fire's progression. So we broke up these 3 projects that I'm about to show you. This is West County, and it's Adams Canyon and the Ventura Motorway, and that is in between Highway 33, and it runs east and west. The Ventura Motorway runs east-west to the Highway 150, so that corridor between the 33 and 150. And we took this project looking at it. It was after the Thomas Fire. The Thomas Fire is predictable, and Brian will talk about behave models, where he can basically recreate the Thomas Fire, the direction it's going, and we can see it's path of destruction. So we looked at Adams Canyon, and that's where the Thomas Fire jumped Highway 150. And that's a 1,600 acre burn that is grant funded. We went through all the CEQA process through Rincon Environmental, and we're in the middle of that project. That, like I said, 1,600 acres. And then throughout the Ventura Motorway, that's also one of our, we have over just under 300 miles of fire roads. And we strategically will use the tools that I mentioned above in the first slide there, the masticators, hand crews, and to widen those out and use those as a strategic fuel break. But within that Ventura Motorway, we have proposed there's 2 other burns. And that idea is once that, if we do get another Thomas Fire, it's east wind driven, and we can slow that progression rate. It hits that burn scar, slows it down a little bit, can buy us time, and after it hits the next one, slows down. So every year we're rotating different burn plots and trying to create a different H class of fuels. The next slide. This is the East County, and again I should mention on the west side of Adams Canyon and the Ventura Motorway, that's all private ranch land. So we have agreements with the ranch owners. It's good for them. They want to use it for range improvement, which also maintains that fuel load. So this is East County, and it's very different, right? We don't have a lot of private landowners that we can access. So MRCA had a grant. They had some money. They approached us on work that we can do. So again, Brian and I looked at Crummer Canyon, where currently we have goats, and in the blue, that's all grazing. So everywhere you see blue, I know it's hard to see. We have grazing. We're utilizing all the methods that we discussed earlier with grazing. The red's prescribed fire. That's going to be a broadcast burn. The yellow is mastication lines. And with that, it's again existing utilizing the existing fire roads that are in Crummer Canyon, and it's to prevent a fire going into Bell Canyon and Hidden Hills. So we expanded with goats. All the fire roads that they have there, we're expanding 25 in each side with prescribed grazing for that. And then the green line is mastication, and it's through riparian areas, but we send our hand crews in, thin that out, follow all the mitigation measures, and try to be light on the land. The project on the left is Long Canyon, and that's when we're just now going through the process of submitting all the governor's proclamation for an EPP, Environmental Protection Plan, and that's submitted. And again, that's looking at Long Canyon's behind Wood Ranch area, and we looked at that piece of property of like what can we do the most with. And the green line, the blue line is roadside thinning. It's an existing fire road, so we'll widen that out. The purple is prescribed fire, and then the yellow line breaking that purple to the green there is a mastication line. It's along a ridge top. So any fire that'd be coming out of the east or west, it has a purpose. The green is grazing, and I think, and those are the 3 projects that we have. And again, we have numerous projects throughout the county, but just to break it down, how we come up with this process, I'll turn it back over to Brian. He can talk more about fire run behavior models.
Thanks. Okay, so when we look at a piece of dirt or we're looking at a landscape or a canyon or a mountain range, as firefighters, we're looking for the path of least resistance for that fire to go to come from and go to burn to. But we're also looking at different points to where it's advantageous for us to take advantage of the topography and the fuels given the weather scenario to suppress a wildland fire. On this slide right here is basically just an example of what options we have based on how much fuel load is on the landscape. So on the very left-hand corner, on the XY, where the XY meets on the left-hand side, lower left-hand corners, in the low, see a person there with a shovel. And basically what that means is we have so much we can fight fire with people and hand tools so much, and we could take so much heat in British thermal units, heat per unit area, and take that and dig and dig and dig until we can't. Okay, the next green section of that is where we have an entire 20 or 40 person crew come in, and they can take a little bit more heat because they get off the line one by one and change and take turns. And then moving up the chart, where you see a dozer or a piece of equipment, and so that piece of equipment is able to take a lot more heat than a person is, right? So with that amount of heat, they can go and make fire line and suppress a fire with taking quite a bit of heat. And then we get into the purple and the red or orange, and how you look at it. That's when we really can't do anything, okay? And so this is based on heat per unit area is based on the tons per acre of fuel on the landscape. So for instance, a tons per acre for grass, a grass field, you cut down 1 acre of grass, you put it on a scale. It weighs 3 tons, maybe 10 if it's heavy grass, okay? You put the same chainsaw, 1 acre and medium brush. It could be 20 tons per acre to 60 tons per acre. Same thing, big brush, the size of the ceiling, it's gonna weigh more. Timber, it's gonna weigh more, all that weight. So when that burns, that gives us specific heat, right? So grass burns really hot, but really fast. Brush burns really hot, sometimes fast, depending on the weather, but sometimes slow also. And that's based on the left side of the chart, you see, if you could read it, it says rate of spread and then chains per hour. Basically, that's how we measure how fast a fire burns. So, our people or hand crews are able to take in and produce so much fire line per hour. And for example, it's about 22 chains per hour, which is a chain, if you just education, a chain is 66 feet. Okay, it's based off of the old township and range system. So hand crew can do, a little bit 20 to 40 feet of fire line production in this scenario. A whole crew, 20 to 40 person crew can do more chains per hour because there's more people, there's more, progress. Again, the dozer, heavy equipment, they can go and take more heat and get more chains per hour, completed on the chart. And then we get out into the purple and the red, where there's just extreme fire behavior, where that fire is, really outrunning us. So I just wanted to talk about the example here of in essence, the more tons per acre you have on the landscape, the more tons per acre you have of brush, the more heat that's going to be produced, and it's going to be harder for firefighters to get in there. If we had 20 dozers, maybe not, but with people and fire engines and getting out of the rigs, that amount of heat, we're not able to do much because it burns so hot.
You want to talk about, so with that, with the heat, that's where Brian, he's a fire behavior analyst, and he can look at those areas, he can put inputs into a computer modeling system. I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah, about the modeling?
Yeah.
Okay.
We look at a certain area and how we can put the inputs and see progression.
Sure. So there's several different fire models that we use. One is through the federal government that the U.S. Forest Service uses. It's called FS Pro, and those modelings take place on using acronyms, government and acronyms. It's called WFDS, WFDSS. WFDS, so we get into WFDS, we put in all the parameters, our inputs, and then our outputs. So fire behavior in itself is based on 3 things. Fuel, weather, and topography, right? 2 of those things you really can't do much about. We can't do much about the topography where the fire is burning at, and we can't really do much about the wind, right? But we can do a lot of stuff with the fuels, and that's why we scratch down fire line down to bare mineral soil and make fire line, because we're taking away that fuel source. So that triangle, if you will, if we take away one of those sources in the triangle, then the fire is going to go out. As for modeling, software systems and basic inputs are very important. So whatever you put in for fire behavior modeling is what you're going to get out. So if you get, what we always call garbage in is garbage out, right? So if we have the wrong fuel type, if we have the wrong weather, if we have the wrong topography in there, it's not going to be a correct input. Nowadays with software and a lot of people working on this worldwide, there is our models are pretty accurate. The other model that we use is called, that's through TechnoSilva, and that CAL FIRE uses, Southern California uses, and PG&E uses, and some fire agencies in Australia also use. And CAL FIRE's version is called Wildfire Analyst. And so we can put a point on the map, say I want this fire to burn on this day, either previous weather or predicted weather, and it will take in the predicted weather, the predicted fuels, or the fuels, and the topography, and make fire behavior run and send the fire a certain direction, whatever way it's going to go. So without modeling, they're very, very accurate. They use LiDAR for fuels. They measure soil moisture, soil density, duff layers. They see how thick the brush is, or trees. Everything that you can possibly think of is inputted into these systems. So that's my job of going out and doing a fire behavior run or model, and then getting boots on the ground to verify that's actually what it is. Again, like, if it's not what it is, then we need to change something on the modeling side. But the fire behavioral models are able to, take into account spotting potential. They'll throw spots miles out on very windy days. They'll take into effect a marine layer. You'll barely get anything to burn, in a marine layer situation. So yeah, that's about it for fire modeling, right?
That's it. That's all we have. Are there any questions?
Okay, what we'll do, we do have two speaker cards, and we'll have our speakers, and then opportunity for the board members to ask questions, make comments. Encourage those of you from the fire department to stick around, because I have a feeling there are going to be a lot of questions for you guys. So I do appreciate all the information you've presented already, but I don't know what the official term is, but please stand by. So I do have two speaker cards. The first is for Bonnie Clarefield Bylan. If you just go to the podium and give us your name, and not unlimited time, but and if you would speak into, okay, you got.
I'm short, so can you hear me? Okay.
Does this?
I think it's on. No? Do I have to press a button? Covered with tape? Yeah, the light is on. Yeah, but then it's going to be hard to read. Oh, this does sound like it's working. The short one doesn't. Okay. Hello, good evening. My name is Bonnie Clarefield, and I'm here tonight as both a member of the community, I live in Wildwood, and a board member of the Conejo Valley Audubon Society. It's a privilege to live in the Conejo Valley, a place rich in biodiversity. Our open spaces support native plants, birds, reptiles, and mammals, forming one of the most important habitat networks in eastern Ventura County, vital to wildlife survival and bird conservation. When I was an environmental science major in New Jersey, my landscape architecture class studied Thousand Oaks as a model. A city designed with open space, including ridgetop and oak tree protections, built into its plan. Supported by the Quimby Act, this forward-thinking design showed how people and nature can thrive together. COSCA's mission is to protect, preserve, and manage open space lands for the benefit of wildlife, native plants, and people. Large-scale vegetation removal directly conflicts with that mission. One of my favorite birding areas is at the end of Camino de Celeste, where coastal cactus scrub thrives. Homes there were intentionally built about 100 feet from the open space. If we extend fuel modification into that habitat, it would be devastating. It would destroy nesting areas for the coastal cactus wren and the threatened California gnatcatcher, species I've seen less than 20 feet from the private property line. Fire science is clear. Removing native vegetation doesn't stop Santa Ana wind-driven fires. Even 8-lane highways can't stop embers that travel miles ahead of the fire front. True safety comes from home hardening and defensible space, not from erasing the habitat that defines our landscape. I spent 27 years as a park ranger and wildland firefighter in the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area. Once native habitat is disturbed, it's hard to restore. Non-native plants moving fast, crowding out the natives, our biodiversity depends on. These invasives burn hotter and faster, offering little to no value to wildlife. Fire agencies and park officials abandoned large fire breaks in the Santa Monica Mountains decades ago because they don't work. I trust COSCA's staff and board, and they will hopefully continue to rely on fire ecology science and sound management practices that protect both people and wildlife. Please don't give in to fear. Thousand Oaks was built for people who value living with nature, not against it. Let's stay true to that vision and protect the open space and biodiversity that makes this valley such a remarkable place to call home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. We have a second speaker card for Janet Wall.
Do the tall microphone as well. Good evening, Chair Huffer, board members, and COSCA staff. My name is Janet Wall. We're a few months shy of living in Thousand Oaks for 40 years. I'm here tonight to listen to your ideas along with our Ventura County Fire Department experts regarding the fact that wildfire is part of our history and will continue into the future. While we would all like to ensure homes aren't burned, I would like to offer my thoughts on what I view as a disturbing direction regarding managing the open space COSCA and the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy have endeavored to acquire and protect. It's my belief that management and protection of open space must encompass protection of our local wildlife habitat and native plant communities. I see a disturbing movement to steer COSCA away from that primary function. One letter submitted to you seems to assert that there is an increased risk to homes caused by mismanagement of COSCA-administered wildlands. I think this is folly fostered by fear. When someone chooses to buy property in the middle of open space, they are knowingly buying what could burn sometime in the future. My husband and I did exactly that in 1986 when we purchased our home on Tamarack with Triumphal Park across the street and open space to the left and behind our house. Our house came with a wood shake roof, and because I also harbor fear, ours was one of the first in the neighborhood to be replaced with asphalt tiles. After Woolsey, my husband re-drilled and replaced 1/4 inch screens on 90 roof vents with Brand Guard fire-safe vents. Nevertheless, we are surrounded by oak trees and other plants on our property, the HOA property, the park, and open space. I don't think destroying live plant matter will make our home more resistant to a fire spread by embers flying through wicked Santa Ana winds. In fact, the coast live oak foliage may prevent blowing embers from reaching our wood balcony. In addition, it's well known that trees and other plants have a natural cooling effect, making vegetation a simple and effective way to reduce urban heat islands. The land our home sits on burned in 1974. The next fire came through in late January 2007. Wind was minimal, allowing the fire department to extinguish 33 years of accumulated growth in a few hours. Native plants have revived, and wildlife has returned in abundance, as seen on our outdoor camera photos. This healthy ecosystem is restored. In closing, it's my hope that COSCA continues to acquire and preserve ecologically important open space land. I think it would be foolhardy for COSCA to cave to the notion that clearing habitat beyond the 100-foot maintained clearance zone will prevent homes bordering open space from catching fire embers in severe windstorms. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Janet. If there's nothing further, Mr. Stark, nothing further from you, then what I'd like to do is give each of our board members an opportunity to ask questions or make comments. And I will start on my right side with Director Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair Hepper. Thank you to our firefighter guests and Brian Stark for an amazing presentation. General feeling is that while there is the fear out there, I think everybody in this room understands the science and definitely agrees with it. I don't know if there's a way that the scientific articles you alluded to, Brian, if you said we could email you for a copy of those, are those available to the public as well?
Yes.
To see, you know, if there's a link? Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's important
We
to.
can just post it on our website too.
I think that's a great idea. Just keep getting that message out there that way. And I had a question about the fire modeling, the behavior modeling. Are you using that for figuring out how you're going to run prescribed fires, or are you using that to, when a fire is actually happening, to try and determine where it's going?
We use it for both. And so for prescribed fire, we can run the models under the weather conditions that are under the prescription, and that's very, very important. So any prescribed fire has to be without a doubt under the weather prescription and the fuel moisture prescription. Everything has to be worked out, and it's very, very small time frame throughout the year when that actually works out. For wildland fires, as soon as they start, we have a system in California that shoots out an immediate fire behavior model within 5 minutes of how that fire is going to burn. And, you know, our fire managers throughout the state can look at that map and go, ooh, that thing's going to go really fast according to the model. If suppression efforts don't make sense. So when I talk about fire models and burn rates and all that, that is without any suppression whatsoever. So in essence, there is a fire that's lit on the ground and it burns for 8 hours. It's going to burn for 8 hours in this direction. Okay. Now we can throw roadblocks into that model that prevent the fire from burning this way. Say firefighters on the right-hand side of the fire got a fire line in, and we could prevent the fire from burning on the right-hand side. But it's just one of those things where the basic fire modeling takes into effect with zero suppression efforts.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think I'll pass it over to my other colleagues rather than hogging all my questions. I'm sure some of them are the same.
Thank you very much. Director Newman?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Stark and staff, and thank you to our partners at VCFD. We're very grateful for all the information you presented tonight. Thank you to the speakers as well, and to everyone who came and everyone who's tuned in tonight. This is open space conservation is a topic of I would say near universal interest here. So I'm happy to see such strong interest and such good information about that. I just want to reiterate a point, Mr. Stark, that you made at the top, which is that this is just an informational meeting, correct? We are not proposing changes, discussing changes, contemplating changes. There's nothing on the table like that.
No, we're...
Right. And in terms of best practices, I did not hear anything from any of the excellent presentations by VCFD that proposed any changes. Would you say that was correct? That you weren't saying, oh, we're not doing this one thing right now, we need to do this something differently, right? I don't see anyone raising their hand saying, no, we have to change this and that. So I guess the only question I have left, given that this is purely an informational item tonight, is around these current best practices. I have two questions on that, I guess. One is the have been multiple references tonight to the 100-foot perimeter. And my question is there any science when it comes to wildfire prevention and response? Is there any current science that would justify any change to that 100-foot? Or are we doing the right thing right now with our 100-foot practice?
So currently, no, the law, there is no proposed law at the state level or anywhere else to expand the 100-foot zone any further. The science seems to indicate, the rather that we need to protect from ember showers and fires being spread through wind and embers getting into the community. So the focus is kind of changing from that. They're going to work, with each other. We're going to continue to do our part in the 100-foot zone, but the Board of Forestry right now at the state level is trying to finalize regulations regarding what they want to do within the 100-foot zone, and more specifically closer to people's homes in the different zones within their yards, and what they're planting, ornamental vegetation and things like that. So that's currently what's being enforced for new homes being built. They're subject to those new laws, and the existing homes are not subject to that. But that could change by the end of the year.
Sure. But that's a different topic, since
correct. But
that's home hardening. We're talking about open space or perimeter.
Well, it's home hardening and
sure,
retroactive landscape laws that could be.
And some of that could touch open space, and if the perimeter goes into open space, right? If a 100-foot radius around a home is, or diameter rather around a home is.
Correct. Yeah, that will continue to be enforced, and
right.
There's nothing currently on the books to expand that.
So there was also, that's a great setup, thank you, to my next question, which has to do with fire breaks, paths that have been cut, both in Mr. Stark's presentation and some of the VCFD information we heard tonight. I hadn't realized that a lot of the fire breaks that exist are in relatively remote areas. It's not like there's a perimeter break around the city where city land ends and open space starts. And that's my question is there any additional benefit in prevention in having some sort of pathway / break between where city land or CRPD land ends and open space begins?
Beyond 100, you're talking about beyond 100 feet?
I'm just saying as a perimeter in general around, not necessarily 100-foot perimeters around private property, but right, there's a city parcel, private or public or whatever, or CRPD parcel, and then there's COSCA, there's open space.
Correct.
And for a lot of the city, it's a ring, right? So there's a perimeter around the city. And my question is, would additional pathways / breaks in that perimeter be helpful for fire prevention or not?
Yeah, possibly, yeah. If there's strategic areas where we can thin fuel out and create additional breaks, yeah, anything additionally would be beneficial.
Okay, and given that at least potentially it is, could those be dual use breaks? Could they also be used as pedestrian or mountain bike trails, that sort of thing?
I'll defer that to my colleague here.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, there are fuel breaks that are out there. It's usually we'll expand off our fire roads. We're not just going in the middle of nowhere and we're tying it in somewhere, right? There's a purpose behind it.
And I apologize. I didn't mean to suggest they were arbitrary. They're there for a very good reason.
Absolutely. And a perfect example is Shelf Road in Ojai. During the Thomas fire, you notice Ojai didn't burn. And our crews went and we maintained Shelf Road, right? We brush it so we have access in there. We can get fire engines in there, fire crews. And we lit fire. We did a backfire. And we directed that fire to go around Ojai. And it went the toe of the slope of the topas and up to the top. So that's what we're looking at. I'm not looking at a fuel break like, nope, it's gonna stop a fire when we have 60-mile-an-hour winds. It's access so we can get ahead of a fire.
I see.
We have to fire off of it. If there is fire coming, we're not getting direct impingement. We're taking a 10-foot road and expanding a little bit of fuel break so our fire engines aren't getting blistered, our crews aren't getting burned up.
So there's this access benefit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then to answer your question, trails, anything they can, right? If we get down to mineral soil, and I'll call it not an everyday fire, but like a day that doesn't have east winds, right? We got some light west winds. Those make a huge difference. That's where it is. So if mountain bike trails, all of that can benefit. So it's all how it's done.
Very
and
good.
prepared. Yeah.
Terrific. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's
Yeah,
all.
I
Thank
can-
you, Chair.
I can weigh in on that a little bit too, having
Please.
delved into the science of this. The science is clear that in some strategic spaces, some additional work may have value, and that's why we implemented projects like the Arroyo Conejo project to take out the Arundo there. We're doing a grassland project early next year. We'll be using some prescribed grazing on. But I refer back to COSCA's primary goals is home protection during wind-driven fires, because when the wind isn't blowing, the houses generally are not igniting. So we're planning for a very specific set of conditions and so we're looking at methodologies that apply during those conditions. If we were to look at individual projects, they have to be vetted for environmental impacts, and so we're not considering promoting projects out in the interior of open space. Our open space areas are, while they seem big to us, if you zoom out a little bit and look at our state, they're very small. So any impacts that we create out there kind of have an outsized effect. And there are historic fuel breaks that were built on COSCA property that never did recover, and they're still basically a wick of grass that can carry fire into the interior of our areas. So COSCA, our policies and guidelines do include provisions for certain strategic fuels management projects, but these are not about expanding the fuel, our defensible space program. That's 380 acres every year that COSCA is clearing.
So just as this is more of a comment than a question, but one of the things I'm in violent agreement with you.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I most appreciate about COSCA's fuel management approach is that it hasn't been focused on having a yardstick and saying it's this many feet or this many more feet, and instead has focused on the greatest dangers during wildfires. These plant and distinguishing between different types of vegetation, where there are non-native plant types that can blow embers great distances, and these things are essentially flying bombs, and that's what COSCA has been focused on, is reducing that very harmful type of vegetation, but not all vegetation, not clear cutting, not anything like that.
Yeah, we're called upon to create balance, and we're in regular touch with the fire department, and they know who COSCA is and what our goals are. So, there isn't a conflict there. We will stay in constant contact on any opportunities, but we do need to create that balance because as a conservation organization, and going back to that idea that our open spaces are not huge, like in terms of what's the range of certain wildlife. They need a certain amount of space, and so we need to preserve that.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just so you know, it was not arbitrary by choosing to start down at this end, because for some reason, both of our retired fire professionals are down on this side. So I'm going to ask Director Nichols, any questions or comments that you might have?
Thank you. I noticed the emphasis was on retired.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. One thing I wanted to point out is while we're talking predominantly about COSCA, because that's the agency that we represent here, much of what we're talking about is initiated through the city's planning process. And, you know, that there was a decision made, and I can tell you since I was here on the planning staff in 1988, as we were looking at the city growing in some of these major development areas to say, hey, we need to address this fuel modification issue, and 100 feet was the standard at the time. It still seems to be the standard. But that's the, you know, COSCA is the recipient of this open space once a city planning process has taken place, define those boundaries. Even with Mr. Starks and his staff recently, we've been transferring those properties to COSCA, some of which the city acquired 20 or 30 years ago. So we're the beneficiaries of that. And truly the, you know, the guardians, the managers of that, and as we have talked about often, as we have transitioned from this, you know, acquisition process to more of a management process, and some of the examples you were talking about with the Palms and the Arundel is a good example of that, is how it's continued a management process. And I think it's definitely kind of maturing as far as how we're doing that, but and I know we've got a lot of documents that guide us in that process. And some of them have held the test of time. Open space is still open space. However, some of the policies, maybe you could always look to address those. But I definitely think with this, you know, 100 feet of fuel modification and the way that the city infrastructure has been designed and built with that in mind, you know, it's important to keep that in mind. But as I also hear from even my own family, you know, should we clear more brush, or, you know, friends and family, you know, what is it? I understand with the fires, particularly most recently the LA fires that we had, where we just saw a tremendous urban conflagration, the likes of which we've never really experienced before. And I can remember telling my family outside of the state, I've been here for 40 years and witnessed a lot of strong Santa Ana winds, but nothing like I had ever experienced in January. That was, you know, off the charts. And so it's no surprise that when you get winds like that, you get major fires. That, and you complicate it with the insurance issues that we've been seeing with fair plan insurance, you know, all those things that we've seen. Power safety shutoffs, I mean, it's just, you know, it's kind of like bubbling up. All these things are happening. It really got people on edge. So I think it's important to look at these issues. Are we doing things right? You know, it's always good to review those. But I'm also rest assured that hearing from our local professionals that, you know, what was seemed to be okay 30 years ago, 40 years ago, is still okay today as far as the 100 feet. And the study and research that I've done, a lot of which I read in one of the documents that was provided, and I actually know several of those people that wrote it, you know, is supports that, and I would concur with that. Another example I just wanted to share was the mountain fire that we recently had just a year ago, where the fire skipped from Satakoy to Camarillo Heights. Embers traversed 3 miles over irrigated agricultural lands. So yeah, embers travel a long distance. And so, you know, if those neighbors had 200 or 300 feet clearance, I don't think it would have made a bit of difference. So I think, you know, while I certainly support the fact that we should still stick with what we've been doing and keep up with the 100 feet of clearance, we should also, you know, perhaps revisit what we could do. And I definitely think the Fire Safe Council program that we initiated with the inspections, home hardening, is the way to go. It's an educational effort. You know, the fire codes and the building codes have increased significantly since 2008. The newer homes are much more resilient than the older homes, but we still have a lot of older homes in our community, and we need to keep that in mind. So it's kind of a, like I said, we're in a transition process. We know it needs to be done. We've been doing that over time. but there's some catching up yet to do. So I think we just continue to look at our policies and our management direction, but also, educating our community and working with the Fire Safe Council. I think that's going to be a great option to do that. And obviously with the fire department, we've been working with them for years, so I don't expect that to change. They've been a great asset and a great supporter, and appreciate that. So again, thank you, public and fire team, for being here and continuing to support us. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Director Engler.
Thank you, Chair. I would just want to start off thanking both our staff and fire for coming in and helping us look at this problem. I think the dialogue in itself is helpful, and I'm glad that we have had it come together. The fire department, having been a firefighter for my career, Ventura County Fire is known as one of the premier wildland urban interface fire departments in the world, if not, definitely in the country. And we're fortunate to have them as our provider. They've come with the 100-foot recommendation, which was based in, I believe, in the mid '80s was when that was determined, if I remember right. I don't know if the nature of fire has changed, but we do have had more fires in the last 20 years. I think a stat I saw was all 20 of the largest fires throughout California. That does include some of the timber areas as well as the chaparral areas. But all 20 of them were in the last, since 1991. And 15 of those were since 2017. So we do have a changing fire issue going on, and I'm glad that we're talking about this to determine whether or not it's appropriate for us, for us to look at other means of approach that perhaps we can address this changing fire environment. With that preamble, I love computer modeling. It's great stuff. Glad you guys are using it. In terms of your computer modeling, have you identified any specific locations in Thousand Oaks that could benefit from more, fuel reduction? And I want you to talk a little bit more about fuel loading in the wildland urban interface. In other words, grasslands has 8 tons per acre, brush, that sort of thing. And why is that important to your plans for fire suppression?
Okay, so using satellite data and that looks at the landscape itself and looks at the type of fuels, the grass, the brush, the chaparral, the really high, tall brush, trees, timber. Computer modeling gives us what we call like a point of delineation. And so pretty much it draws a line in the sand on the landscape that says, this line you may have higher potential than 2,000 feet down the road, right? So it identifies a point on the map that says this point to this point and this point to this point to essentially draw a box around the fire to contain the fire. And so that gives us a heads up of where, where historically we have stopped fires, historically where we have put, fire lines in and had success. And using that data along with what we call ERCs, which is an energy release component. And what the ERC takes into effect is the current fuel moisture contents, the heat, the weather, temperature, RH, the actual fuel and fuels that go into that. And it gives us a number, if you will, that says this type of brush will burn this hot during this time of weather in regards to fuel loading. So, common sense tells us that, we have a huge 20-year plus old growth vegetation that has dry, decadent fuels. We have 5% RH with some wind behind it, and you put fire on the landscape, that fire is going to go. When it comes to modeling that stuff, the models take into effect where are we going to have the best success at, you know, obtaining a good stopping point for this fire, and or steering it away from communities. Because once we identify an area on the map, we say, okay, this is what we need to put this fire line in, and we go. So using the satellite data, we can take a look at the fuels and the loading, how many tons per acre there is, and based off of that, the computer models run their calculations and show us our point of delineation, you know, aka the line in the sand, wherever that line is on the map, of having a better probability of success of containing a wildfire. And then we also have something called like the 90th and 97th percentile for fire behavior. And so on the 90th and 97th percentile, those are the same lines in essence of the point of delineation where we would have success containing a wildfire. And that those lines pretty much coincide with each other. And so when you see, for instance, when I see red on the map where it's really, really brushy, you know, and the mountain range is exposed to wind, and it's red, we're not going to have that good probability of containing the wildfire. Where I see blue on the map, light blue or light green on the map, that's a point where we can have probably pretty good success. It's either shaded from the wind, the fuel moistures are on the northern slopes, which it's typically our higher fuel moistures, and so we have a better understanding of where we can draw a box around this fire to ultimately contain it and or steer it away from communities.
Go ahead, sorry. More comments?
No, I was just going to expand on that. The question was if we identified spots. So part of that we do. We live in a fire-rich community, right? Rich history in fires. Woolsey, you name it. Thomas had some devastating fires come through. So that's part of our jobs. We look at areas where has not burned, where has a 50-year history of no fires, and we look at that and we'll run models and look at where could we do some good. So yeah, we absolutely have spaces throughout the whole county.
Now, is that in the urban interface, or is it out in the, say, the backcountry?
Yeah, we're looking to defend communities, right? Make any difference, any impact we can to slow that progression. Buy us time for rotor wing, fixed wing to get in there and stop the fire.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with a lot of our public here who's interested in protecting our at least, especially our backcountry and the animals and habitat that provides. My interest is in areas that abut residential right in the urban interface. You have identified places in Thousand Oaks that could use some remediation?
Yeah. Unfortunately, COSCA is a lot of that open space does not have a burn history to it. So yeah, we've looked at that and identified some areas that not looking to clear cut anything, but like I said, mosaics, shaded fuel breaks, anything just slow that progression down.
Now, by mosaics, you're not talking about going down to mineral earth and stuff like that. You're talking about taking
hand crews coming in.
As someone said, lollipopping or whatever.
You can lollipop that, get rid of the ladder fuel so they can't carry. But yeah, it's thinning out some of that brush. We're not looking to remove wildlife or any habitat. There's strict guidelines that we have to follow. It's CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. So with that, there's mitigation measures that are in place, and we follow that law.
Okay, so when you do that type of treatment, does that encourage non-native growth, or do you take the non-native growth out? How do you go about ensuring that you're not creating another issue that they'd look at?
Type converting, for example, yeah, we're taking all that into measures. So environmentalists, biologists, they'll come out, they do their surveys, they'll give us mitigation measures, and we look and how do we mitigate that problem. So it'd be thinning it out. It's not taking out, clear cutting down to mineral soil everywhere, scarring, bringing dozers in. It's nothing like that. It would be, we're sensitive to the same issues everyone else is sensitive to. So yeah, it'd be thinning with our hand crews. That RC mower, it's a rubber tracked, anything that's light, goats. So those are those methods that we can use to do proper treatment for certain areas.
I guess the other question I have you shared those with COSCA and the city and other partners in the area? Is that something that you've just come up with, or is it something that we've known about?
No, we've presented things in the past.
If I could interject there,
Okay.
I get it's a long train of thought here, but
Okay.
when we are talking about the chaparral habitats and age, once a stand of chaparral hits about 15 to 20 years old, it's not really going to accumulate much more dead material than a 50-year-old section. There's a limit, and I have a couple articles on that in my scientific report. So altering age classes of vegetation hasn't really been effective in chaparral habitats. Is something that's more often used in a forest type habitat. And like I said, we're focused on, wind-driven fires. And in most of these cases, a lot of these, there will be no air resources available. And I can tell you, having managed land for 30 years, that if you take the chaparral off, you will get invasive grasses and mustard, and that's what it'll turn into. And restoring it's incredibly difficult and expensive. And what we'd be doing there is exchanging a fuel type that is harder to ignite and slower to burn for a fuel type that's easy to ignite and faster to burn. I don't think we'd be increasing home safety by doing so. The larger fuel projects that go on in the county, people have to consider that, every landowner kind of has their own land management goals. So in some places, if you're a cattle rancher, for instance, it's great to remove chaparral and grow grass, and they have a cow all year round to eat it. They don't have to mow it every 3 weeks. So some of these types of things and the management of these are not practical. I don't think we'd be making the community any safer. And the whole concept of a shaded fuel break kind of hinges on the shade part. We don't have a lot of shade because we don't have a lot of trees. And chaparral doesn't grow tall enough to really create a situation where you'd have, you could reduce a ground fuel and not have a ladder fuel. It's like you're going to have ladder fuels just by the structure of its vegetation type. So in those areas, that's why we're careful when we look at project ideas. I mean, we will entertain project ideas, but we do have to look at the long-term management. And it's one thing to come in and do a project, but then it's got to be managed all year, every year. And so COSCA has to decide, well, how are we going to manage our land? And since we don't have cattle to eat grass, and we don't want to perpetuate a situation where, we've already got areas throughout our open space that have type converted because of our fire frequency and past land use practices. And so some of that area will never get back. I'm just saying that our plans are built around the protection of these areas, and if there isn't some kind of a scientific underpinning that says that a home will be safer if we do this project, then it's less likely to be considered.
No, I would agree with it. I don't think we have to go buy a herd of cattle to police the open space. But what I'm hearing the fire experts say is that there is ways to do some fuel reduction in specific areas. Again, I was a fire professional for 30 years. All these things are systems. We look. People talk about ignition. So there's been quite a bit of work lately with ignition, the PSPSs that we all hate, and the covered insulated conductors are being installed. All these things are meant to try to reduce ignition. Our fire department just went out and bought a couple of real nice helicopters, some Firehawks, that can deliver hundreds of gallons of water for the suppression side of things. Home hardening, my neighborhood was number 9. So I know a lot about the fire hardening and fire safe communities and stuff like that. I'm a big proponent of hardening the homes, taking your safety in your own hands. That is the crux of a fire safe community. But if there's things that we can do as COSCA to be part of that, and we already are part of it. I shouldn't discount the things we're doing. The Arunda, the Mexican palm that were taken out, all the open space areas that we are currently managing, and the areas next to homes that we're currently extending that 100-foot into our land. We're doing quite a bit of stuff, and I think we should be proud of that. But what I'm hearing from fire is that perhaps there's some other things we could be doing. I'm not a wildland firefighting expert. I was what that we affectionately call a pavement pounder. I was a municipal fire guy. So wildland firefighter, I look to our experts, and if they're indicating that we have places that we could perhaps look at and treat, it's pretty incumbent upon us to give that serious consideration, I would think.
I mean, we're in regular dialogue, and we certainly look at these projects, but they just have to go through a filter of, what are those impacts, and, is there some underpinning that would say that doing that would add some level of concrete benefit. I think we are still getting mixed up a little bit in some land management and treatment methodologies. We get mixed up between those that are best used in a forest and those best served in a chaparral, and we're kind of in a blend, in trying to, how do we apply something? I think we also maybe have some slightly different overarching goals. Our overarching goal is, protection of the environment and protection of our neighbors. The large scale where to steer a fire is a little bit different thing. But we would be working pretty close to homes, and so we have discussed these with fire. We just haven't had the chance to do the full rundown. Everything that would come into our office has to go through that scrutiny of whether it would actually do anything or not before we do it, because these have long-term impacts on the environment.
I guess I would turn to our fire experts and say, is there some scientific thoughts behind it? Is there some documented experimentation that indicates that this type of fuel reduction or fuel modification is effective in reducing extension of fire into established neighborhoods?
Yeah, again, it's taking away some of the, again, it's thinning out, right? Like Brian was saying, taking out some of that fuel load, the BTUs, right? That's going to burn with intense heat. I don't know if this answers your question, but another project we have is off of like Casitas Springs area. It's a Steelhead Preserve. It was a 25-acre burn that we did with low intensity heat, but it was we did that project with a UC cooperative, and they wanted to do a study on star thistle. So it was a certain time of year that we had to burn with a certain amount of heat before it seeded and spread. So taking that stuff into consideration, also like chaparral, a mature chaparral at 10 years or older, on a prescribed fire side of it, if you burn it at the right intensity, you don't type convert it. Before that, it is too immature, and you can end up type converting and getting invasive species in there. So we look at those, take that all into consideration of when we do our prescribed fires.
But also during a wind-driven fire, 5-year-old chaparral burns just as readily as 50-year-old chaparral.
Oh, yeah, stuff burns good. It just is able to come back. I know.
It does, but I can tell you this, I've been doing it for 31 years, and same with Brian, when you're cutting line, you know the difference between mature chaparral and something fresh, right?
Yeah. I guess my questions really are whether or not we need to look at having more frequent dialogue with the fire department, having more discussions on how to go about this. It makes, like I say, it makes intuitive sense to me that if you have reduced the fuel loading next to residential areas without disrupting the overall nature of the vegetation, that you're going to be in a better position to reduce the fire exposure. That just makes perfect sense to me as a firefighter. If you reduce the fuel, it'll take less water, less effort, everything else to suppress it. Is that something that you're trying to find? And at least you had at least one area in Thousand Oaks?
Yeah, I mean, you can take Wildwood, Lindmere track. Yeah, we've been in discussion, and that there is things that we could do to reduce that threat. But I believe in home hardening as well. That both of them go hand in hand, right? They're going to complement each other, and that would be the ultimate goal.
They're hand in glove. It's like I say, it's part of a safety continuum. Everything from medicine to home hardening. But I just want to make sure that we as COSCA is doing what we need to do to be part of that continuum, even more so than what we're doing. I don't know. I would hope that we have some. If there's areas that have been identified, it seems to me that it's incumbent upon us to really accelerate whatever actions we're doing to be able to look at those, because, again, my experience with fire, if you've identified an issue and that issue has been ignored by the agencies involved.
I wouldn't say that that's been ignored, however.
I'll change my word. I didn't mean to say ignored. If it hasn't been acted upon by the agency, that is, to me, seems to be a liability issue. And I'm no attorney. We do have an attorney in the room, but I don't want to ask him an attorney question.
Well, I mean, we also could face other liabilities when, the project types, discussed are, amount to expanding the fuel modification area beyond 100 feet. And we've already established at our, through all of our experts that 100 feet, despite the fuel load, will protect the home from the radiant heat and the flames. And that clearing more won't be effective in reducing ember ignitions. That's where the home hardening comes in. So there has to be kind of a specific case rather than just a general expansion, because as we see, it doesn't matter how far we are or how close we are to a house when we have valuable habitats. It's all being used. And like a fire break, for instance, a study in Los Padres found that the only time that they were ever successful at stopping a fire was when firefighters were on it. They're not magic. We're already providing space and safe space for firefighters to work, so I think our COSCA's responsibility has been managed well.
No, I agree that we have managed well. I'm not disputing that. I'm just looking at it perhaps that we need to do a little more. Our fire department, which I love, you don't have to go far to find another fire department who says that in specific areas 200 feet is the number. That's just over the line in Ventura and LA County, depending on topography, depending on fire history, those types of things. So if they're coming to us with, I understand that they are specific locations or just a generalized, all neighborhoods adjacent to the brush.
Yeah, we have.
I don't think it's universal there.
Specific locations that we brought here Sorry. We do have some specific locations that we brought, that we've talked about with COSCA before, is based on our fire behavior models that we've suggested for fuel management practices to COSCA. And we are in regular dialogue with them, and we have talked about specific locations. I think there's 5 projects, right? We have 5 projects that are identified that we've talked about with COSCA for the last, how long, right? 5?
I've been in here 5 years.
For at least 5 years. So if you're asking for specific locations, we do have projects that are identified for specific locations in Thousand Oaks.
But to Brian's point earlier, and I appreciate it, is this a one-time fix and you guys walk away, or what, you know?
No,
weeds grow back.
any project that we propose, there is a maintenance side to it. So absolutely, it wouldn't be something that we would just do and then walk away from.
And so the repeated removal of that vegetation will type convert those areas, because that's inevitable, you know, and that's why more frequent fire type converts habitats. But, you know, manual removal of vegetation does the same thing as a fire does. We've looked at the projects, you know, that have been offered, but we don't find that there's really any, you know, we've read deeply into wildfire science, and that's just contrary to what the science tells us. So,
Okay, then I guess we have a dispute between experts then.
but that's not to say that we can't get together and come up with something there. You know, we are receptive, but there's that process. We have to be shown that we're not compromising something for no purpose.
But it's, you know, from what they describe, they are merely trimming the habitat, not changing the habitat. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the case or not. This is what I'm hearing them say.
It's a snowball effect, though. It's hard to do in practice. You know, I've spent 30 years doing habitat restoration, and I have a pretty good idea of what happens when vegetation communities are manipulated. And the fear here is that we are simply making certain areas of our open space more flammable.
That's not what I'm hearing them say, but I understand your point of view. Anyway, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Just to reiterate, this is an informational session. We're not making any decisions, making any changes, but a lot of good questions and thoughts have been brought up. Appreciate the review by Brian on what COSCA has been doing and will continue to do in terms of some of the fuel reduction, working with the home hardening, working with our fellow agencies in the community. I do appreciate the comments that we have both from Bonnie and Janet. Thank you very much for your comments. I feel like those support what our goal is and what we've been doing. So I'm hoping that we can continue to get that kind of support, not just from the two of you, but from the entire community. And I really appreciate all of I knew that the fire department was not just sitting out there waiting for fires, but to find out a lot of details of what it is you folks are doing, looking to, certainly can't eliminate the risk, but certainly to reduce the risk as much as possible. The point was made that, you know, we've seen a lot of really major horrific fires just in the last 10 years or so. As pointed out, you know, the January fires down in Los Angeles County, I believe it was Director English, have never seen winds like we had there. And I'm not a fire expert, but, you know, we take some great pride here in Thousand Oaks that we have this ring of green around us. But many of those who live in the community go out your back door or maybe just walk down to the end of the street and you see some of the open space, some of the wild, some of the trees and other vegetation that's growing there. And to remember, you know, being able to see, I lived near Cal Lutheran, and seeing the glow over the hill from the fires that were coming across some years ago So it's certainly understandable that a lot of people in our community are concerned about the potential of fires. But as I said, we look at our community with a lot of open space surrounding us. I don't think Palisades or Altadena has any kind of space surrounding them like we have here, and yet they were devastated by the fires. And certainly it seems to me, again, as a non-professional in this area, that it's a combination of reducing some of the risks without, totally leveling or paving over all of our open space, to work closely with our partners at the fire department to make sure that we're doing everything possible, and to help continue to educate the community that, yes, COSCA's doing their part, the fire department's doing their part, Park District and City are doing their part, but individual residents need to do their part as well. And the fact that only 100 and some people have taken advantage of the home hardening that we have offered through COSCA. There are probably a lot of things that everybody needs to be doing in order to we can't eliminate, but at least to reduce if not the risk of fire, at least the results of fires that are going to happen despite the best efforts. So thank you to, as I said, all of our partners and friends at the fire department. Thank you to our staff, and thank you to those of you who showed up and at least listened, made some comments, and hopefully we've all learned a little bit, and we'll continue to work to make sure that we make Thousand Oaks, the Conejo Valley, as safe a place to live as is possible, with the understanding that we can't, we're not living in a bubble. We just can't eliminate every risk, but minimize the risks. So yes, Director Engler.
Just thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a suggestion. I know we can't take any action on this. This is an informational item we're discussing. But just as a suggestion, I know we have reports at our regular meetings, everything from the director's report, the report from our rangers. I would like to see us maybe get a report on the interactions with the fire department and COSCA, and see how that dialogue is going. I hear we have this logger's head. It's not a loggerhead, but it's the difference of opinion on this particular treatment. I'm curious to see how that goes forward from here, rather than just have a one-off today. I'd really like to see if we can get a report, and I'm just going to throw it out there as a suggestion, because we can't do any actions tonight. But just as a suggestion that we do have some follow-up on it and see where it's going.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion. Yes, Director Nichols.
Before they left, I just had to confess to our fire behavior analyst that my first fire behavior class was done on pieces of paper with charts and tables, and then you had to do your own graphing until you finally got to a chart like that. You know what I'm talking about, don't you?
I sure do.
And it's
in
progressed quite
regards
well.
to that, we still do use pieces of paper with crayons, believe it or not. That's how we're taught. So, yeah, very basics.
The good stuff is always good, right?
Absolutely. Never fails.
Any other? Yes.
I do have one more question. Thank you. We talked about education and what has been done so far. Is there more of an educational push moving forward? To me, just the simple definition of what defensible space is, just like a fire break. It's not just this magic area that's going to stop the fire, how it protects the home from heat and that, and it also gives our firefighters an access to help protect our homes also. Is COSCA doing anything to continue the education with FireWise, et cetera?
So when COSCA first began contracting with the Fire Safe Council back in 2021, and it was not too long after the Woolsey fire. There really wasn't a community conversation going on. The Fire Safe Council had one employee. We like to think we had a lot to do with the growth of that organization as an early funder. Once the state caught up with COSCA and started providing more funding, the Fire Safe Council's expanded. Now they've got, I think, over 10 staff. And so they're doing a lot more work, and the state's been funding it. So there's been less, like COSCA's not the only game in town anymore. And we know that the fire department continues to play their role in doing the education stuff as well. And I mean, I hope the community will take away that while we have lots to discuss with the fire department, we do trust and enjoy working with them, and that we do count them as a valuable partner. They've been doing some important work and had a nice seminar a few years ago on Firewise communities. And so we hope that'll continue. COSCA's initial funding allocation for this type of work is running lean. So if there's a role for COSCA to continue, we obviously don't have the staffing and the expertise to go out and do all of the outreach ourselves. So that's something we do contract. The Fire Safe Council's pretty busy now, though, too. They may not need COSCA as much, but they do have ongoing programs in the Conejo Valley, and they're committed to, helping residents in our area.
Awesome. Thank you.
If there's nothing else, thank you everyone for being here. I will admit that I got a little nervous seeing all these firefighters back there, as there was still a red flag warning in effect early in the afternoon. So glad we got through that. Thank you all very much. And we will adjourn this meeting until our next special meeting on December 10th. Thank you.